Today is Tuesday, October 4, 2022. I'm Pastor Michael, and this is Wilderness Wanderings. Our text is from Psalm 108. My heart is steadfast, O God. I will sing and make music with all my soul. Awake, harp and lyre. I will awaken the dawn. Give us aid against the enemy, for human help is worthless. With God we will gain the victory, and he will trample down our enemies. Verses 1, 2, 12, and 13. This psalm offers us unique insight into the spiritual practices of ancient Israel, and as such, it ought to inform our own spirituality and faith in the same God. It is commonly understood that Book 5 of the Psalms, Psalms 107 to 150, was compiled after the Israelites returned from the Babylonian exile. As the Jews trickled back into Palestine, they began to rebuild Jerusalem and the temple of God. With this rebuilding emerged a new tradition of worship at the temple site. It was a new day which required new songs and prayers. The Psalms gathered into Book 5 are part of that worship renewal. The words of Psalm 108 are part of Psalms 57 and 60 melded together. It offers us some insight into this new period in Israel's history. The opening stanzas offer two declarations. On the one hand, the psalm proclaims that God is great and exalted among all the nations. Though this is a note often strummed in the Psalter, it is worth repeating. In a world in which we know every horror that is happening everywhere, it is easy to forget this basic Christian belief. The Apostle Creed's opening line, I believe in God the Father Almighty, creator of heaven and earth, is a very succinct statement of this theme. Our world belongs to God, a contemporary testimony developed by the Christian Reformed denomination, weaves this theme throughout every paragraph. The second declaration of these opening verses is that the psalmist will praise and exalt this God. In fact, praise to the Lord Almighty will awaken the dawn. The first and foremost task of the day is the praise of God. These opening words give the impression that the psalmist is having a good week. But then we discover in verse 6 that Israel is in trouble. God has promised the land to her, but she does not possess it yet. As returning exiles, they have little and less. Just a little more trouble will snuff them out. When trouble arises in North America, we expect to hear someone ask, where is God? Many of us have asked it too. Israel teaches us a different way of life. When things are not as they should be, Israel's worship leaders teach their people to do two things. First, not to complain, but to worship. This is reminiscent of Israel marching around Jericho's walls before they had fallen. Worship, especially the corporate worship of God's people, includes a recitation of God's great deeds. One of its purposes is to renew flagging faith. So if you haven't returned to the post-COVID worshiping community, I encourage you, if it is possible, to join God's people in worship. Second, in times of trouble, Israel is taught to remind God of his promises. Verses 7 through 9 recall what God promised long ago. So where prayer becomes, God, it's time you kept your promise. If God is indeed Israel's mighty covenant God, then he will surely keep his promises. As you meditate on this psalm, notice the robust prayers that arise out of the knowledge of God's character and promises. I'm regularly struck by the audacity of Israel's prayers. By contrast, our prayers appear too polite and too timid. After Thanksgiving, our Emmanuel congregation will be invited into 28 days of prayer. I encourage all of us to be emboldened by such prayers as this psalm. Keep this psalm in mind when you ask God for things. After all, Jesus taught us to pray, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. That's no little prayer. As you journey on, go with the blessing of God. May the peace of the Lord Christ go with you wherever he may send you. May he guide you through the wilderness, protect you through the storm. May he bring you home rejoicing at the wonders he has shown you. May he bring you home rejoicing once again into our doors.